name is Linda, and I'm a grateful member of Al-Anon. Hi, and I know I'm supposed to be here because I started traveling from Nashville, Tennessee at 7:30 yesterday morning, and I got here at midnight. I can tell you anything you want to know about the airport in Atlanta, okay? And I thank you for the invitation, for allowing me to come here. This morning I woke up in where God must hang out every weekend. I mean, this place is absolutely gorgeous. And I want to say thanks to the committee for inviting me where's Leroy? I saw him this morning. I told him to turn around. I only saw the back of his head yesterday. At 11:30 last night, this man picked us up at the airport and drove us here. Thank you. Wow. And our greeting today, and then Bob and Kathy. Thank you for, when I was sitting on my couch and you asked me to come, it seemed like a good idea. Okay. So, Al-Anon has taught me to ask for what I need. And in some parts of the country, they have a moment of silence before they do the serenity prayer. And somebody asked Lois Wilson, our co-founder of Al-Anon, what she did in that moment of silence. And she said, I invite God to the meeting. So if you would be willing to indulge me in a moment of silence, and I feel like I'm prayed up, but my knees don't know it, okay? So please, just a moment of silence. Thank you. And now I'm not up here by myself. I've got the God of my understanding. I've got the wonderful people that were in Al-Anon when I walked through the doors. I've got my sponsor, my home group. My home group gives me this little safety pin. That's how we help one another. It's kind of low-budget guardian angel. When you're getting ready to go do something scary like give a talk or visit parents, those scary things, no matter what age you are, that we have to do. So I've got my safety pin. And in truth, don't we love coming together? My wonderful now and forever husband, Scott, you're going to see in Al-Anon, we don't give advice, but tonight with Lyle and tomorrow with my husband, what did Betty Davis say? Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy ride from these two guys, okay? But Scott's dad, my father-in-law, he says, we're herd animals. That means we're like cows. We like to come together. When you think about it, we join social clubs, churches, we go to meetings. As the human race, we like to hang out together. And that's why we have these incredible conferences. And I think that's why we get to come together. Oh, I know what it is. We may have given up the drink, but we're not giving up the party. Yeah, okay, that's what that's about. Yeah. And Alcoholics Anonymous does it great. I love the roundups, the conferences, the Al-Anon conventions, and then every 5 years they have the big birthday party. Remember, I was in Al-Anon that I could have gone to Seattle, but that didn't work out. And like in 10, we're going to go into San Antonio in Texas. I'm from Texas. It's going to be hot. It's going to be real hot. Okay? And don't pack any rain gear. It won't rain, okay? But I know I'll see all of you in 2010 in San Antonio. But the first big AA birthday party, the international that I got to go to with Scott, was in San Diego. And what a great time that was getting ready for that. We packed and we're so excited. We're married, newly married, and got so excited about going out there to go to that. And we get to the airport and we run into some people that we knew from our meetings that we didn't know they were going, but obviously they're going out to San Diego also. So again, we get on this big airplane and I think that plane had to stop in maybe St. Louis. And, some of the earthlings got off, and, and some more of us got on. And, and you could tell it was us by the jewelry with the circles and the triangles, And so the last leg of that flight, of that big jet going into San Diego, was absolutely packed out. And it was pretty happy. We didn't know each other, but it was kind of fun. And I'm standing at the back of the airplane waiting my turn to get into the ladies' room. And I'm watching the flight attendant. Now, she looks, she's kind of doing stuff. She's working, and I'm on a holiday. So I said, how's your day going? And she goes, well, it's fine. She says, it's really okay. She said, we're very busy. Every single seat is taken, and we have never served so much coffee. Oh, yeah. In fact, I'm a little nervous. Aren't I between you and the coffee pot? I don't know how that's going to work out, but I'll talk fast, okay? So we land in San Diego, and it was wonderful. It is this coming together like you're doing this weekend, like we're doing, coming together and speaking the language of the heart in Heartland, and that's what happens. Now, I was invited to be on one of the Al-Anon panels. I am just so Al-Anon. I was so pre-Al-Anon, and I'm just so Al-Anon. And I was invited to be on one of these panels, not tell my story, but was given an assignment like months ahead of time. And the topic was living with sobriety after the honeymoon's over. Well, since I'm in my third marriage, I thought, well, I guess they want to know about honeymoons. I don't know for sure here, but anyway, being the good Al-Anon that I am, man, I looked up everything about relationships, about marriages in our literature. We've got some great ones, the dilemmas of the alcoholic marriage, and if you want to know about relationships with whoever, look up sponsorship. That's a good way to start. In fact, Scott and I are going to be doing a workshop, I think, this afternoon on sponsorship, which was absolutely my first healthy relationship I've ever had in my life, was with my sponsor. But anyway, so I read everything I could to talk about 15 minutes, including that little pamphlet, Sex and Intimacy. Remember that little pamphlet? It's out of print now. I said, man, if they'd just put some pictures in it, I think it would have stuck around, But Virginia Beach just didn't want to do that, I guess, So here I am, got all my notes. I'm ready to talk about living with sobriety after the honeymoon's over, and I'm so prepared. And see, I'm in Al-Anon, 7 years by now, and I've been going to meetings, and I've been doing the deal, and I can't tell you anything I said, because the woman that talked before me, when she introduced herself, she told my entire Al-Anon story. And this is what she said. Hello, my name is so-and-so, and I'm from Georgia. I am a member of Al-Anon, and I am addicted to mood-altering men. Oh yeah, that's me, And I thought, I've been going to meetings all this time to figure that out, And I am so good at it. Oh, man. In fact, Scott, we go to these conferences, and most of the time they're AA, and I really do appreciate the Al-Anon participation in this. Trust me, this doesn't happen all over our country. This says, congratulations to the wellness of your recovery here in this area, to have AA and Al-Anon participation. So Scott says, he's usually talking to the AA guy on the phone, and we're flying into this conference, and he says, I'll go get the luggage and you pick him out. Because I can do it. In fact, being the true alcoholic that he is, he goes, I think I can use this antenna that you have to help benefit our city of Nashville, Tennessee. And he says, in fact, I gave, for my birthday, he gave me this gift. And he said, here, this is your gift. And I said, okay. And I opened it up, and it was 500 business cards. Okay? He said, look, he said, if you're at the grocery store and you look over there and you see somebody you're attracted to, he said, you can give them one of these cards. And I go, okay. Now, the front of it has my name, phone number, that sort of thing, 2 butterflies, very appropriate. The back of it says this: hi, my name is Linda. I am a member of Al-Anon. I find you attractive. So I suggest you go to the nearest treatment center and have an assessment done. He says, just think how much time that would save. You know? By the way, honey, I'm down to my last 20. Okay? Time to reorder. Okay. Okay. But you know, I love alcoholics. And thanks to Al-Anon, I don't have to apologize for loving alcoholics. They're absolutely incredible human beings. They're feisty, they're on the edge, they're loving, caring, wonderful, and I love alcoholics. And the first alcoholic that absolutely took my heart away is my dad. Okay? Now, I've known my dad all my life. Okay? And that's going to be 64 years next month. Okay? So you don't have to work out any more math on anything. And I've seen my dad drink almost every day of my life. I've seen him drunk a lot of days of my life. And I'm telling you, if my dad walked through that door right now, we would all fall in love with him. He's the most incredible man. You'd want to hang out with him. Dogs and children follow him around like the Pied Piper. I mean, he's 85 years old, and he's just incredible. And I grew up in West Texas, Odessa, and if you want to know what my life was like, watch Under the Friday Night Lights. That's the high school, okay? I graduated in 1964, and that's what my life was like. Now, being an only child with my mom and dad had a lot of benefits. I got all of the budget for shoes and clothes, okay? I got all the back seat when we went on a family holiday, you know? Nobody looked out my window, you know? And my parents gave me stuff all the time because they loved and cared about me so great. I never heard my parents argue about anything except my dad's drinking. And my mom was, one of the things that she taught me was go to the window and wait. You know, she had the Venetian blind marks on her forehead. Go to the window and wait. And I couldn't have told you because we had such a good life. It was a time of innocence. We had sidewalks. I got to ride my bike and skate for miles and miles. It was a wholesome life. But something was happening during that time that I call step 0. Okay? That big hollowness in our gut that starts happening. We don't know why. We can't say why, but we kind of know that it's there. And I love my parents, and they love me. My mother passed away in February, so if I get a little emotional, that was why. And I tell you what my mother died of. She died of untreated co-alcoholism. Everything in her body was due to stress, blood pressure, hypertension. I mean, everything about her. She lived her whole life with her hands clenched and her teeth clenched, and it absolutely killed her. And yet my mom and dad would have, if she had lived a little longer, they would have celebrated like 65 years of marriage, you know. So, but I never heard them argue about anything but the drinking, and it was such a way of life that I couldn't have said, you know, if somebody had come in and said to our family, you've got to stop eating macaroni and cheese. You know, macaroni and cheese is absolutely killing this family. Just give up macaroni and cheese. That wouldn't have made any sense to us any more than giving up the alcohol. Now, my dad was a very successful businessman. In one generation, he turned his life around from living in a farm in Oklahoma without plumbing and electricity to a very nice estate. He's a very successful businessman. And what that meant is that they could give me the stuff, and I'd try to put the stuff in the big hole in my gut, and I couldn't tell you what was going on, but I knew something was not good in that house. And then when I got to Al-Anon, the miracle happened. I got my hands on some of the Al-Anon literature. I don't care which program you're in, get your hands on the Al-Anon literature. It is so pure and from the heart. Take that little 20-question pop quiz. Are holidays frequently interrupted? Don't read it as an adult. Read it as what you were like in the 6th grade or the 4th grade or the 9th grade. And what that told me is when I would be at school, I'd be wondering what was going on at home. And then when I'd get home, I'd be wondering, how can I get out of here? Now, I don't think these were conscious thoughts, but that Al-Anon literature showed me that many times we're not the first flowers to bloom in this garden, okay? And so because the drinking was at the country club, it was entertaining business people, it was kind of boisterous and party-like, and every day it just didn't seem like it was a problem. Now, Odessa is the oil patch, and I'd go pick up my girlfriend in the mornings about 7:30, and her dad worked the rigs, so his 5 o'clock in the afternoon came at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd go pick her up, and he'd be in the living room, he'd be in his undershirt, he'd have taken his teeth out, and he'd be drinking out of a bottle, and I judged. I thought, there must be something, that doesn't look right to me. And then we'd go to the country club that night, and my dad would make a scene and maybe go to sleep in his mashed potatoes, and I wouldn't think anything of it, So alcohol was just around us all the time, and so was oxygen. So how could I think that anything was going wrong about that? But when I graduated from high school, I opted to go to a junior college because I didn't think my parents could live without my being there. Because you see, I was the net. Tell him this, tell her this, and so I was the net all the time. My mother is like a recluse and did things like crossword puzzles and played games, so I had that in my life. My dad always had a project going, hammer saws, fishing, whatever, so I had that part in my life. I mean, I'm telling you, I had a great childhood. And I say I was an only child, but I was an only child, and maybe the bottle was the other sibling, okay? So I opted to go to stay living at home and go to college and still live at home because I didn't think that I could go off and leave them by themselves. But step 0 is happening, and across campus comes this really good-looking guy. I guess I could have handed him one of these business cards because something in me went thumpity-thump, and evidently something in him went thumpity-thump because in 2 weeks he asked me to marry him. And it seemed like a great idea. We went to my parents and said, hey, we want to get married. And they started asking really pesky questions like, shouldn't he have a job first? And I'm going, that's just details. We'll work it out, And we scrapped and fought and argued. And 6 months later, my parents gave us an absolutely storybook wedding. It had at our church, it had the center aisle. I wore a white dress, which I deserved to wear. Quite honestly, I think that was one of the things encouraging me to get married. I'd been a good girl for about as long as I could be, okay? Y'all can figure that one out. And I just turned 20, and now I'm marrying this man, or this young man, and we're going to live happily ever after. And we did for the first 2 weeks. Now, this is a guy that I've known for 6 months. I'd never seen him drink. And to celebrate our 2 weeks anniversary, he came in, we're students, okay? And we're living in student housing, which is about the size of this square right here, if y'all remember. And he came in with 2 of his best friends. Cliff was probably in his history class, and Bud came in the cooler in between them, okay? And I saw his friend drink a lot and kind of pass out or go to sleep on our couch, and I saw my then husband drink a lot and kind of pass out on our bed, and I took the pre-Al-Anon stance. I mean, they looked like a bunch of falling trees in my apartment, and I took that pre-Al-Anon stance. You know the one, hands on the hip, face scrunched up, and I had a conscious thought, I am not going to let him get away with that. That's a plot. That's like, okay. And so that night, to punish my husband for getting drunk on our 2-week anniversary, I always came up with these great plans. That night, to punish him, I slept in the bathtub. Now, this was so logical. I mean, the friend's on the couch, he's on the bed. I mean, here I am, Linus, carrying my blanket and my pillow and climbing into the bathtub and sleeping there, to punish him. Now, the next morning, I've got a backache and he's got a hangover, and that's a dance we did for 16 years and 2 lovely children. You're going to do this, I'm not going to let you get away with it. And I'd plot and I'd scheme and I'd script and I'd manipulate and I would get sicker and sicker, okay? Now, we were students for a long time. And we'd been married about 2 years when our first daughter was born. And when we brought that baby home from the hospital, I thought the fine print said, now that you're parents, you will now be adult and you'll get a job and the picket fence and you'll live happily ever after. Well, evidently he didn't get that same memo. He was continuing to be a student and changed campuses and changed degrees, and we're kind of busy being students, okay? And he still didn't have a job, but then one day he accidentally got a job. And what happened was he came running in, he grabbed his guitar, and he said, the Holiday Inn Lounge is going to have somebody start singing in the afternoon. That was one of his favorite bars, and I'm going to go audition. So he went and auditioned. I have this baby who's, about a year old now, and he goes down and auditions, and he gets this job. And now all of a sudden, he is making more money than we'd seen in our entire married life, and he has a career. He's sometimes I say magician, but he was because he would disappear frequently. No, he was a musician, okay? And he got this job at this Holiday Inn. And in Texas, they had liquor by the, private clubs. You had to have liquor by the drink, and you had to. And so this Holiday Inn innkeeper told another innkeeper, and after 30 days, he was invited to go to another Holiday Inn, and then another Holiday Inn, and then another Holiday Inn. And pretty soon, he's living on the road, and he's making music, and I'm trying to finish school, and I've got this young toddler now. And I have to tell you that he didn't ask me to do this. But what the disease was doing to me was I was like 15 or 12 hours away from graduating with honors. And I turned my back on that because I thought I needed to be with him. I didn't think he should go off without adult supervision. So I packed up a hot plate, the diapers, the toys, and stored what we had, which was a lot of textbooks, basically. And we started living without an address. We're living in hotel rooms, traveling all over Texas. And it's always in the telling. He would go down to work every night, and he'd come home from work, and he would kind of smell like and act like and look like he'd been to a party. But since it was been working, it must have been okay. And I'm upstairs 24/7 with the toddler in a town that I have no connect. Every 30 days we moved, and I'm getting kind of bored. I'm getting kind of restless. You can only hang out at the pool so long. And then I had a brilliant idea. One Friday I told him, I said, I'm going to be the drummer in the band. And he says, have you ever played drums before? And I said, that's just details, we'll work it out. And I took the bass player, and on Saturday, for $50, I bought a whole trap set of drums. I'm talking a bass drum, 2 ride toms, a floor tom, a snare, a hi-hat, a crash cymbal. Monday night, I was the drummer in the band. And you can't tell me that we're not determined people. I thought I had to be there with him. Now, you keep in mind, that was 40 years ago, and I was a lot younger and a lot thinner, and hot pants were in, and I smiled a lot, and I became very successful playing the drums, okay? And so now here's our story. We're traveling from hotel to hotel. We come into a town and our name is up there on the marquee, and we become the band that you're supposed to find after hours, which means after you couldn't serve legally alcohol, we'd lock the door and we'd party all night. Whoever in Texas was in tour, we would party with them. I mean, great names that you would know. And, oh yeah, but I've got that baby up there in the room. Who's taking care of her? Well, I would put in the contract that we would get this amount of money, we'd get 2 hotel rooms, we'd get to eat for free in the restaurant, and they would provide a babysitter. So I wouldn't even know the name of who was taking care of my daughter. But it would be a high school student, probably a younger sister of one of the waitresses there in the restaurant, and it might be a Wednesday night that we're going to party all night, and she'd have to go home. Well, I'm such a good mom. I would go upstairs and I'd take the phone off the hook and I'd put it by my wonderful daughter's pillow. I'd go downstairs and I'd take the phone off the hook in the bar, and I'd be such a wonderful wife because I'd be there with my husband all night. And then every now and then I'd go over and I'd listen to see if the young toddler was awake. I don't think human services would appreciate that action in today, But I thought, what I'm doing is I'm trying to outguess the disease. See, I thought I was doing everything I could to be a good mom and to be a good wife. So we partied and partied and partied, and we became very successful, and we moved. And there's 8 years between my girls, and I got pregnant with the second daughter. And believe me, a pregnant woman behind a drum set is not a pretty sight. So I retired. And in all of this moving around, when we didn't live with an address, and in 16 years of marriage, we moved 13 times. I'm talking about solid moves, not even counting the time that we lived on the road and didn't have an address. And when I got to you, I listened to your stories, and you gave that a name. You called it Geographic Cures, and it's like when my husband would stand in front of me and he'd say, "This isn't working, let's move to Houston." I'd say, "Okay." And I'd pack up the boxes. And then we'd be in Houston and he'd say, "This isn't working, let's go back to Odessa." I'd say, "Okay." Because you see, I believed him because he believed it. He wasn't trying to trick me and he wasn't trying to wreck the family on putting up new deposits for the water and the gas and the phone, etc., etc., etc. He believed it was going to be better. We never knew we were trying to outrun the disease. We always thought we were moving towards something, that it would be better. It sounds like a lot of moves. I think if you look at the history books, Lois and Bill Wilson had 52 different mailing addresses at one time in their life, okay? We desperately try to outrun the disease. But what happens is you pack up the dishes, you pack up the books, and you pack up the disease, and you move it on down the road with you. So one of the last of these moves was we moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And I'm thinking, whew, what better place for a music person to be? A songwriter, a singer, Nashville, Tennessee, and a woman that played the drums wasn't such an oddity. And now we're going to live happily ever after, and we're going to be normal. But we lived there for about 2 years, and things didn't happen fast enough for him. The disease of alcoholism is progressive, and sometimes taking care of the party seems more important than taking care of business. And the music business is serious business in Nashville. And this man that I was married to came in and said, "I don't like it here. Pack up, we're going back to Texas." And I have to tell you, I looked at him, and I was so old, and I was so used up, I couldn't move again. And I said to him, "I can't." And he played the trump card on me that he'd used several times, and he said, "Well, I guess we just get a divorce then." See, I'd always been so afraid of being alone and of abandonment, I would have moved to the moon with that man, if I possibly could have, because I just couldn't bear being alone. And for some reason this time I said, "Okay," because I was used up. I could not pack another cardboard box. I was totally used up. And he got our neighbor, who was an attorney, and for $50, we got us a little divorce, and he put off his music instruments in his car, and he took off, and he moved back to Texas. And I wish him the very best, because he's the natural father of my 2 girls. And the happier he is, the better the relationship is that he has with my daughters, who I love dearly. Now, the thing about this man, he moved back to Texas, he married a young woman, they're raising another family, and so I can hold him in my prayers, okay? But this is what he left in the rearview mirror. He left a 3-year-old, an 8-year-old, and the mom whose resume said drummer in the band. He cleaned out our bank account, which I think he thought he was entitled to, and I'm left there looking at the car, disappear over the horizon. But luckily, the attorney that handled our divorce, he said, look, you're going to need a job. I guess he wanted to, even his $50, he wanted that. And he said, there's a man that has a commercial real estate company on the 25th floor of the First American Bank Center. He said, I want you to go down there and talk to him. He is looking for an office manager. I did not know my control skills could be used in business. I go down there and I interview for this job and I get it. And now I am managing. I am managing the office. I am managing shopping centers. I'm managing to make some money. And I took to commercial real estate, and it took to me. There weren't a lot of women in there in real estate back then. And I get my license, I get my broker's license, and now I'm going to make sure that my daughters and I live happily ever after because Mom is making the money and I'm doing the deal. And I have to tell you, during this time, I turned my back on my girls the way anybody would with a drug or a drink. I am so busy making money that this is the message I would give my daughters. I'd call home and I'd say, hey, just stick something in the microwave because I have some people, very important people in from out of town, and I have to take them out to dinner. Very important people. Then in the morning I'd say, hurry up, I've got to get you to school early because I have a networking breakfast. So hurry up. But see, we're living happily ever after because I am making the money. I am putting those zeros in the bank and I am making the money. And Christmas comes along and I give love like I'd been taught to give love. I gave my daughters all this stuff, clothes, toys, whatever you want, that we unwrap all the stuff. And the wrapping paper could probably level out with this podium. And I take the Christmas pictures, and now we're living happily ever after, and we've got all this stuff, and Mom's making a lot of money. And I get the Christmas pictures back, and wow, this little girl doesn't look happy, and wow, the big daughter doesn't look happy, and the mom doesn't look happy. What is missing from this picture? A man. Yep. I am now in my mid-30s. I don't have a lot of time, so I marry my boss. Now, he'd been asking me out for a while, but he was married at the time, and he kept saying, that's just details, we'll work it out. So here's the Cinderella story. Successful commercial real estate developer marries his secretary, who has done great, adopts her 2 daughters, moves him into a mansion because it had 6 bathrooms right across the street from the governor's mansion, and now we're going to live happily ever after. Wouldn't that be great if my story ended there? You'd have never met me, okay? Because it looked like a Cinderella story. This was the looking good and feeling bad time. We are driving fancy cars. We have about 6 sailboats. We're traveling all over the world, but strange things were happening in this house. My girls are in private school. Strange things are happening in this house. We're very successful. We're the movers and shakers, but strange things are happening in our house. We're in all of the right clubs, like Friends of the 100-Year-Old Cognac. We had a wine cellar that would rival a restaurant. I mean, we are the shakers and the movers, but scary things were happening in that house. And I'd go to my doctor and I'd say, I think I'm going crazy. Something's wrong here. And he'd look at my address and he'd know my lifestyle, and he'd say, what do you have to complain about? And I'd go away. I'd talk to my girlfriends and I'd say, I really think I'm going crazy. Something really bad is happening in this house. And they'd say, didn't you just go to South America last week, and aren't you going to Puerto Rico next month? What's wrong with you? What do you have to complain about? And I'd shut up. What did I have to complain about? And I'd go to people at my church and they'd say, look at your lifestyle. What did you have to complain about? And I couldn't figure it out because it was such a good package. It looked so great. But you know, it was like Hollywood. This was the front set that everybody was seeing. And if you ever went behind the scene, horrible things were happening in that household. And I didn't think a second failed marriage would look too good on my resume, so I took this man kicking and screaming into marriage counseling. I'd picked this doctor out of the phone book, thought that was a good recommendation, and we went in to see this doctor, and we would have wonderful trips, and then we would have horrible fights. And so then we'd go see this doctor. Now, we'd go into this doctor's office, and I would sit, and I'd start crying. I don't know why. I didn't cry. I'm a businesswoman. I do big deals. I've come up against 8 attorneys at a time. I work with shopping center developers and retailers. I don't cry. I'm in this doctor's office and I'm just not crying. I am weeping. And my husband, in his chair, he has crossed his arms, rocked back in his chair, and totally shut down. Now, the good doctor on his side of the desk is kind of there, and and I guess he would get bored, because he would pick up a paperclip, and he would undo it, and he'd make it look like a little helicopter. And he'd kind of twirl it around. It was fascinating. And then he'd look at his watch, and he'd say, oh, your time is up. You're too sensitive, and you're not sensitive enough. Go away. And we'd go away. And then we would live a storybook life, and we'd travel, and then something horrible would happen, and we'd go back to the doctor, cry, shut down, twirl, you're too sensitive, you're not sensitive enough, go away. And this was a pattern that went on for like 6 years. And we would have an unbelievable lifestyle, and we'd have unbelievable things happening behind closed doors, and we'd go to that doctor, and I would cry, and he would shut down. And then one day, we had gone on a little honeymoon trip down in the northern Keys of Florida with another couple. Now, my husband and his friend had gone down a little early to get ready for our holiday. That'll make sense in a minute, maybe. And then we come down there, and we did this road trip, and it was awful. I had just done a big deal. I was exhausted. We hadn't eaten. Finally, that night, we were in the lower Florida Keys, and we're having a very nice dinner, because I can remember they had tablecloths. You know, in Florida, there's 2 kinds of places to eat. You know, the lean-to shacks, which are great, are the places with the tablecloths, okay? So we were with one of the places with the tablecloths. And that night at the dinner, about 10 o'clock at night, I said something wrong. I said, pass the salt, please. Or I said, please pass the salt. But I look over and I see what I now know as the monster of the disease show up in my husband's face. And it was going to be a bad scene, and it was going to be public now, and I couldn't handle it. I stood up and I said, I'm leaving. They said, fine. The other couple said, fine. They think I'm going to the hotel. I began a run, and it was actually a run toward Al-Anon, but I didn't know it at the time. I got up, I called a cab. Long story, I had a cab take me from the lower Florida Keys to the Miami airport. I'd seen it done in the movies, you know. And I get back to Nashville, Tennessee, and I did what my mother taught me to do. I waited. I waited for him to come home. I didn't wait in my bedroom. I didn't wait in our living room, our den, or any other room in this house that was a mansion. I waited in my daughter's bedroom with all the pink frillies. My younger daughter, the older daughter was at college. The younger daughter was with the babysitter. And that was the only place that felt safe, around all the stuffed animals in her room. And I waited for him to come home. And man, when he came through the door this time, he was angry. I thought I'd seen him angry before. He was my second husband. I was his 4th wife. And I thought I was the one that was going to make the difference. And he said, no woman has ever walked out on me before. You have embarrassed me, and now it was going to be bad. It was really going to be bad. And just to buy some time, because I was so organized, I said, why don't we call that doctor? You know, when we have a fight, we always go see the doctor. I'm just trying to buy a little time. And he paused, and so I kind of got away, and the phone number was there. Now, this doctor is a guy that you had to call and make an appointment like weeks, sometimes months ahead of time. And I'm just trying to buy some time here. And I called, and the young girl on the phone said, well, the doctor just had a cancellation, and if you can be here in 15 minutes, the doctor can see you. God is in my life, and I don't even know it. And so I said, hey, the doctor can see us right now. So we climb in the car to drive to this doctor's office. We know what anger sounds like. Anger sounds like a lamp up against a wall. Anger sounds like a plate on the floor. Anger sounds like skin on skin. That's what anger sounds like. But I have to tell you, the silent anger in that ride to the doctor's office was absolutely deadly. I was so afraid. The silence was so incredibly a monster in that car. So we get to the doctor's office. Remember the one that twirled the paperclip? And we get there, and they usher us in, and he tells me to sit down and my husband to sit down. And he said, look, before you start talking, I have to say something. He said, my name is Dr. So-and-so, and I am an alcoholic. And I need to make amends to my patients because I haven't always been as present as I should have been. You think outreach doesn't work? It works. From that time to the time before, the man had gotten into recovery and he was a changed person. His face was different. Everything was different about him. This was a long time ago, and things are different then. And he said, look, to make amends to you, my wife and I were going to go to this week-long couples retreat. Here's the schedule. Here are tickets. I want you to go. And they'll help you with your marriage. They'll help you with your life. Just go. And so the next day, I'm on a plane to South Dakota. Things are moving fast here, you know. And so an airplane, this is how we got at this treatment center. An airplane was one of my second husband's favorite bars. That's how we arrived at the treatment center, okay? Now, we came into a room about like this, and it had the posters of what I know now were the traditions and the steps. And just to pass some time, I walked over and I started reading the steps. And it said, you know, there was that word unmanageable. And I thought, man, isn't that an interesting word? Because it doesn't show up in my vocabulary. I manage our office. I've managed to start my own company. I manage shopping centers. I manage our household. Our household is run like a military camp. Our dog and cat have day planners on when they're going to the vet. I managed. But you spelled it like control, okay? And then here's this word unmanageable. And I just said in a prayer at the Miami airport, I said, God, my life is unmanageable, which is not a word that I used, you know. So here we are at this week-long couples retreat. And they had a beautiful lake like this. And couples were there, and they'd hold hands, and they'd walk around the lake. And they'd have a nice meal at night, and they'd have little candles on the table. And couples would hold hands, and they'd come in and sit down at the table. And they'd walk around, twosies and twosies and twosies. I'd sit out there and I'd look around. Ugh, it looks like Noah's Ark. It did. And every time it was our turn to work on our marriage, they would take my husband into the other room. And I'm out there. How can we work on our marriage? How can we work on our relationship? How come they have him in there? How come I'm in blah, 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 blah. And what I know now is that Al-Anon and AA, it's not about saving relationships. It's about saving lives. And they had that man in the other room trying to tear down his wall of denial. Not only was he an alcoholic, he was also a cocaine addict. He was also a cocaine entrepreneur. That is drug dealer when you live across the street from the governor's mansion, okay? And that drug entrepreneurship is what was making crazy things happen in our household, and I didn't know it. And he also had some other hobbies that really wouldn't be beneficial to a marriage. So, we get ready to leave after a long week, and I've learned the serenity prayer. That was good. Took me a week, but I got it down. And then as we're leaving, the director of that facility gave me this huge, wonderful bear hug. And he said, get yourself to Al-Anon. Now, I didn't have a clue. We're in the Black Hills of South Dakota. Excuse me, Lyle, but I thought that Al-Anon was a Native American word. I'm sorry. I did. So now we go back to Nashville, Tennessee, and we don't have that helpful tool of denial. We're having to look at our lives. Our lives look rich, but very, very poor. Our lives look successful, and yet it's full of failures. Our life looks like a storybook. Yeah, the crypt tales from Edgar Allan Poe. That's the storybook we were living. And I could hide out and work during the week, but weekends were long. Weekends were very long. And one Monday morning, we'd had a horrible weekend. And I'm sitting at my very organized desk where I keep 2 secretaries busy full time. And it's about 10 o'clock in the morning, and I start crying, and I can't stop. And I don't cry. I can't stop. And I'm looking around, and I say, oh. And I remembered about Al-Anon, okay. And I looked it up in the phone book, and I called. Thank you, whoever answers the phone at central office or intergroup office. You're saving lives. Now, I call this woman. I'm crying. I don't know what to ask. I have no idea who I'm even calling. And she says, where are you? And I tell her, and she said, I want you to go to a meeting, and it's at noon on Monday. It's just a couple of hours from now. You go over to that meeting at the Methodist Publishing House. They'll give you a schedule. They'll give you some literature. I just want you to go over there. That's what she told me. And I'm going, okay. And I hang up, and I'm going, I got myself back together now, and she wants me to go to a meeting. Oh, well, let me see. Oh, I don't have a power lunch. I guess I'll go over there. I told her I would. They probably just want me to donate money, so I guess I'll go over there, And this was my attitude. So I find this meeting, and I want to tell you who the woman was that had her hand on the doorknob getting ready to go into the first Al-Anon meeting. I'm living in a household that's run by like a military camp. My 2 girls, my husband and I, had separate bedrooms, separate TVs. We did not share meals. We did not have eye contact in the hallway. It was not safe. And my oldest daughter she's in high school, and she's beginning her journey into drugs and alcohol and leading a secret life. My 8-year-old daughter is in what they call precocious puberty, which means her 8-year-old body in the 3rd grade turned into that of a teenager. Her hormones are off the wall. My second husband, who was going to be the perfect marriage because he was the businessman, is bottoming out on cocaine, on drugs, alcohol, and really having a really rough time with his recovery. Me, the one that's in charge, I have no spiritual connect. I'm running all of this, and I'm in premenopause. You think that house wasn't a war zone? It was a war zone. And I look back at those days, and I know there was something I was trying to do on a daily basis. I was trying to please the disease. And the disease can't be pleased. It wants it all. It wants the dreams. It wants the money. It wants the kids. It wants death. You cannot please the disease. So that's who I was, getting ready to go into my first Al-Anon meeting. I opened up the door, and I really believe this was about the first word I said in Al-Anon. I said, what's that noise? And you said, that's laughter. Come on in. Because it'd been a long time since I'd heard that wonderful laughter, that belly gut safe laughter that we share with each other in the meeting. Now, this was a strong meeting that I lucked into. It had only been going on for a little while, and it was started by a woman that had just moved there from Louisiana, and she had strong recovery. And they let me sit. They told me that I belonged. They gave me literature, and they let me cry, because that's all I could do. Cry. And they let me sing. You don't sing at your Al-Anon meetings? Nashville, Tennessee, we sing. This is how I sung. Him did this and him did that. I sung the hymns. Oh yeah, I sang the hymns, and I sung them loud and good. Him did this and him did that. And they let me stay. They said, get a sponsor, work the steps. And so now I'm going to live happily ever after. I'm married to a businessman. We've got recovery. And for 2 years, we struggled and tried to live happily ever after. But it just wasn't meant to be. My wonderful sponsor who told me the truth, she said, it's not wrong for you to want some things from a marriage, but maybe it's wrong for you to expect them and want them for somebody that's not in a place to give them. So that second marriage ended in divorce. And it was ugly. It was like a business divorce. It went on for a long time. And if I hadn't had Al-Anon, I would not have survived. And so I'm divorced. Al-Anon helped me. I just can't tell you. It just saved my life. And my friends would say, oh, well, now that you're divorced, you're not going to have to go to all of those meetings. Thank goodness I got it. And Al-Anon was for me. And now I'm single. I am got some recovery in my life. I'm living happily ever after. I've made amends. I'm just doing great, but I'm lonely. Now, I had one daughter in college, one daughter still at home. I had a fish, a cat, a dog, a gerbil, a rabbit, and a guinea pig. Scott said I had a food chain when I met him. And during this time, I had turned my house into a wonderful, safe place for women and children. I've got 2 apartments on my property, and we would stay there together. The older kids would keep the little kids, and we'd go to meetings, and we'd come back, and whoever had gone to the grocery store, somebody had enough money to put fresh flowers on our table. It was a wonderful time, but I'm lonely. And so on my knees one night, I just said to God, I'm lonely. I didn't ask for anything, because I thought if I asked for something, I might have to buy a horse. I didn't want to buy a horse. And so I just said, I'm lonely. And my wonderful friend that lived upstairs, I shared this prayer with her, and she said, well, haven't you heard that Scott is going to be single, that his divorce is going to be final in a little while? And I said, Scott? She said, yeah, you know, the one from the open AA meeting. See, from the very first time that I started going to Al-Anon, my sponsor had me to go to open AA meetings, never to talk, but to hear the stories of hope and to have a better understanding of the disease of alcoholism. So I had been seeing this guy across the room for years, and I loved what he said at meetings, and I thought, he must have the happiest home life. And now all of a sudden I've got this information that he's going to get divorced. And my friend said, where have you been? He hasn't even lived in his house for almost 3 years. And I thought, whoa, that was information I wasn't supposed to have, you know? So I guess I started acting different because I'm still going to the open AA meeting. And as I'm leaving one day, Scott stepped right in front of me and he said, can I ask you something? And I said, yes. What is it? And he said, well, have I done something to offend you? And I said, well, no. Why do you ask? And he said, you never have eye contact anymore. You come in for the meeting and you leave immediately afterwards. You don't go to lunch with us anymore. You don't have any hugging. You don't have any visiting. And I just thought maybe I'd done something to offend you. And I thought, I said, I have to tell you that I found out that you're going to be single and I'm interested. And he said, and stepped out of the way. I bolted from my pickup truck, and I got home. It was before cell phones, and I had to call my sponsor, and I said, and I hadn't been, because I was working out a plan, because I'd seen this guy, and he's going to be single, and then he stopped in front of me, and I told him I was interested, and she said, hush, hush. She said, I think it's going to be okay because you told the truth, and I thought, well, okay. And so when Scott's divorce was final, he called and he asked me out. And then he courted me. And then we got into a committed relationship, and then we got married. And this December, I believe, he has fewer marriage anniversaries to remember than I do. He came out of a 26-year-old marriage, and I'd already been married twice, but I think this year is 15 years in December, that we've lived happily ever after. And I want to tell you what it looks this like to live happily ever after in an AA Al-Anon home? First of all, we have an AA phone and an Al-Anon phone, okay? That helps a lot. And we don't work each other's program, but we have some understandings. And one of the understanding is that God is first in our individual lives. Our program of recovery is second, and we're third. Because if I don't have God, and if I don't have my program of Al-Anon, He's not going to want the wife that I will become without my program of Al-Anon. And it's the same thing with Scott. So, and sometimes we're not even third. He's got a big business deal going on. I get moved down to fourth place. Several years ago, our daughter, who is now in her 40s, was pregnant with our twin grandsons, who are now 8. And as a family, she and her husband and I came together, and Scott, all of us came together, because the last 4 months of that pregnancy, which is a long time, she had to go on bed rest. And we decided that it would be better for her to move, for them to move into our home so I could help take care of her. Scott agreed to that, and he moved into the guest room with twin beds. And we gave them our bedroom. And I know then that Scott was not third in my life. My daughter was. I'm cooking 3 meals and 2 snacks. She's totally on bed rest. I'm taking her to the doctor. We were in triage all the time. I even lost my Al-Anon program because I was shaving her legs more often than mine, you know. Women understand that, okay? But we got these wonderful guys here safe, and the mom's safe. And I want to tell you about this daughter that's in her early 40s now. When she got out of school, I couldn't understand why, as a college grad, I couldn't understand why she'd seen what alcohol had done to our family, and she couldn't. She was still drinking and partying, and I couldn't understand that. And then finally, I got the light bulb one day. And I stepped way away. And I have to tell you that at 21 years old and a senior in college, that girl found AA. And AA parented her so wonderfully. And in August, she celebrated 20 years of sobriety. Yeah. But here's what it's like in that time that I was single, and our house was safe, and she's living upstairs with a roommate, and she's newly in recovery, and she is going to meetings all the time, and then all the young people would end up at our house, and they'd play cards and drink coffee all night long, sleep all day, go to a meeting, and that was a pattern. And I'm going to work, and I'm thinking that she's a college grad. Oh, but isn't it wonderful? She's newly sober. Isn't that great? They sleep in, get up, go. Think, But isn't it wonderful that I know where she is every night, and these other parents know where their children are? Isn't this wonderful? Weeks go by, and I thought, I don't think this is a great picture. And thank goodness we had that little pamphlet of detachment, which I think should be labeled, "Let the adults in your life be adults." And she's 21 years old, she's a college grad, she's newly sober, and she's not looking for a job. So she came down the stairs one day, I handed her her part of the water bill, her part of the electric bill, her part of the phone bill, and the next day she's out on the street looking for a job. And her part of this says, "Mom, the day you treated me like an adult was the day I believed I could be one." That's all. So, meanwhile, Scott and I are living happily ever after. He came out of a 26-year-old marriage. We've been married 15 years. We're going to add all of the years that we've been married, not to each other, and we're going to celebrate 79 years of marriage. None of that is possible without Al-Anon. What a gift. And I'll tell you the gifts that you gave me. You gave me the gifts of a God of my understanding, a me of my understanding, and an incredible you of my understanding. I want to tell you about those gifts. The God that I brought into Al-Anon would be like a referee at a sporting event. I'd be doing live, a whistle would blow, and bang, I'd get punished some way. That's the God I brought into you. And what you gave me was the journey through the steps. Higher power, God of my understanding, God, and then you look at the traditions and they put an adjective in front of God, and it's loving. That's the God you gave me in Al-Anon, a loving God. Now, I didn't get it right away because I was busy. Remember, I managed shopping centers and lives and thoughts and blah, blah, blah. I managed. But you kept telling me that there was a friendly God, a loving God. I saw it in your faces, but I was busy. And then finally one day I got it from a bumper sticker. Not one of those bumper stickers like Easy Does It or One Day at a Time. I love those because you can have a little meeting going down the interstate. I love those, you know. But this was for a dog obedience school. Now, this is how I found my loving God, from this bumper sticker. In small letters, it said something like Jones Dog Obedience School, and in large letters, it said, Sit Happens. And I realized I could sit. I could sit out here by the lake. I could sit under a tree. I could sit in my backyard. I could sit in a meeting. And this incredible God had always been there. I just had to have the knowledge of that companion God. And that's the God I needed to hold my hand to go into that dark cave of 4 and 5. And that's so that's the God of my understanding that you gave me, a loving God. Now, the me of my understanding that I found through working these steps, the me I brought to you was, okay, who do you want me to be? You want me to be the perfect wife, the perfect mom, the perfect neighbor, the perfect daughter, the perfect friend? You call me 10 o'clock at night and you need 112 cupcakes by in the morning? I can do that. You know, I was so busy that my sponsor would not let me do service work for 2 years. She said, you will get in there and you will try to be president, and we don't have presidents. She knew me so well. So I couldn't tell you who I was because I would ask, who do you want me to be? And it also wasn't safe for me to tell you who I was. Because if in that second marriage especially, if I picked a restaurant and we got poor service or bad food, it was my fault. Or if the car had a flat tire, it was my fault. That's why it was so hard for me to take step 1. How can I be powerless when I'm responsible for the food in every restaurant in the United States of America and international places also? You know, how can I be powerless when I was given so much power? Now, it was in the name of blame, but I still believed that I had the power. If I had the power to make him so unhappy, I should have the power to make him happy. And that's who I was. I was trying to be who you wanted me to be, and I'd jump higher, longer, faster, any way I could. Now, by working these steps, I found out who I am. And who I am is I am not a defect of character. In our Courage to Change book, it says, being human is not a defect of character. And using those steps of 4 and 5 and sharing that with my sponsor, I got married early. I divorced. I thought I had a lot of time to make up for. My sponsor did not doze off in my 5th step. I'll just tell you that. She didn't. But what I got out of that is that's not who I am. Because if that's who I am, I'd still be doing those things. But I let go of that. She helped me let go of all of that past. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. That's my past. And I found out that I had a lot of grieving to do. And evidently that's a common theme among us because we've got that wonderful book about grieving. I grieved the loss of my first marriage. I grieved the loss of my second marriage. I grieved the loss of not being present in my daughters' lives. I grieved the loss of the dreams. Grieving. And grieving is a process, and I got through it. And now I can tell you who I am. I'm finally, my physical age, my emotional age, my spiritual age, finally all showed up at the same time. When I was a little girl, I tried to be an adult and take care of my parents, okay? Then when I was this businesswoman looking like I had it all together, there was a scary little girl inside, absolutely scared to death. So finally now, this is just who I am. Finally all of me have shown up at the same time. And I found out about you. Now, the you of my understanding that I brought into Al-Anon, I divided the whole world up in 2 ways. If you were a female, you were always after my man. And if you were a man, you were after me. And that's the way I divided the whole world. You know? And in the you of my understanding now, I can tell you who you are. You look at the steps, and the first word is we. And the number right there by it is number 1. It says stick with the winners. That's what we are. Number one, we's. You're participating in your recovery this weekend. You are the winners. You're giving me eye contact and respect. You are the winners. The second thing you are is precious and wonderful and a treasure. And that comes from the word restore. Nothing gets restored, like it says in our second step, unless it has worth and value. Think about it. Antique furniture doesn't get restored unless it's worth a lot of money. Those master paintings don't get restored by a tiny little brush unless it has worth and value. You are worthy of recovery, and you're worthy of happiness. And that's probably the hardest lesson I've had to learn, that it's okay to be happy, that you're not going to kick me out, and it's okay for you to be happy. In fact, I believe one of the biggest promises I've ever heard is that there's no limit to how happy God wants you to be. This is what I believe with all my heart. Now, the you are also, when my mother died in February, she became a total recluse. We had a memorial service, and I looked out, and it was about like this room. And I could call everybody there by first name. And I bet only 3 people had actually met my mother. That's who you are. You know, there's a story about the penguins. Do y'all tell that story in this area? A penguin standing up, really doing its life. Well, if a penguin gets sick and falls over, it has no ability to get back up. So if it's sick and falls over, it dies. So when a penguin is sick, all of the other penguins close in very close around it. So if it starts to topple any direction, they'll hold it up. Many times I've been the penguins on the outside. In February, you let me be the penguin on the inside. And you held me up, and you loved me, and you let me cry. One day I woke up, and I'm absolutely a basket case. And my husband said, you got to call your sponsor. And I called her, and she said, get over here. And Scott literally picked me up and took me over there and let me spend the day with my sponsor. That's who you are. You're present in your own lives, and you're present in mine, and you're a gift. And I thank you for that. The result of working these steps, for me, my spiritual awakening was that I have choices. I have choices. I have choices to go to a meeting or to call my sponsor, or sometimes I just have a spiritual flat tire and I'm just a brat and I just stay under the covers for 3 days, you know? I've got those kind of choices. My disease is one of amnesia. I forget what you've taught me. I forget what I believe. So I'm going to close with this story. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was a village, and there was a wise old man in this village, and everybody loved this old man. He was so honorable and full of wisdom, and there was a young boy in this village, and I think you'd say this boy had an attitude, okay? He was jealous of the old man, and he always wanted to trip him up. So the young boy had this great idea, and the idea was this. The young boy was going to catch a baby bird, and then he was going to go to the old man, and he was going to put the baby bird behind his back, and he's going to ask the old man if the bird was dead or alive. Now here's the catch. If the old man said, well, son, that bird is alive, well, the boy was going to squash the baby bird and then show the old man the dead bird. Or if the old man said, well, son, that bird's dead, well, then the boy was just going to show him the live bird, okay? Great idea, great idea. So the boy calls everybody out in the village, everybody to come watch, and he said to the wise old man, he picks up the baby bird and he says, okay, old man, you tell me whether or not this bird is dead or alive. And without hesitation, the old man said, son, the choice is yours. I am so grateful that I made the choice to say yes and come hang out with you this weekend. God bless and thank you so much.